Okay, so Happy New Year's, everyone. You want to call it that? You want to call it a new year, or you want to say whatever you want to say? Today, I wanted to take some time to address time, the concept, and exactly uh, what my ideology behind it is, and why. I'm gonna go off and break down to the history of time, and break down to what I believe and what I've researched on my own, and give my insight, my input on what time actually is, and what how it affects humanity and whatnot. And so I want to start with the history. Before that, before we actually get into the history, I'm gonna go ahead and try to define. We're gonna define it, starting with. Hold on. So here we have uh, Webster's Webster's New World Dictionary. Pay attention to the world's New World. This is circa 1964. So I'm gonna go ahead and read it now. I want to apologize to everyone. I'm a speed reader. I've always been a speed reader, and it's kind of a curse. Okay, so here we go. Time: to part, divide, up, etc. Seen also in tide, a period of interval. Number one, the period between two events or during which something exists, happens, or acts. Measured or measurable interval. Number two, usually a period of history characterized by a given social structure, set of customs, etc. United States time zones as medieval times. Number three, often a period of history or the history of region with reference to a famous person living then, as as an example, Lincoln's time. Number four, usually PL, prevailing conditions, past, present, or future, as times are bad. Number five, a period characterized by a prevailing condition as a time of sorrow. Number six, a period or occasion with reference to one's personal reaction to it, as I had a good time. Number seven, a period of duration set or thought as set, specifically a period of existence, lifetime, as my time is almost over. B, the period of pregnancy. C, the term of an apprenticeship. D, a term of imprisonment. G, a period or periods necessary, sufficient, or available for something, as I don't have time for reading. Number 9, the usual shortest or allotted period during which something is done, as the runner's time. Number 10, the period worked or to be worked by an employee, the pay work to be due for this. Number 11, rate of speed in marching, driving, working, etc., as go in double time. Number 12, in drama, one of three unities. 13, in music, A, the grouping of rhythmic beats into measures of equal length. B, the characteristic rhythm of composition or passage in terms of this grouping indicated by the time signature, also called the meter, the rhythm. See also common time, duple time, quadruple time, triple time, two-part time. C, the rate of speed at which a composition or passage is played, tempo, hence. D, loosely, the rhythm and the tempo characteristics. So it goes on and on and on. I mean, and then it moves on forward to the same time, behind the times, for the time being, from time to time, gain time. So as we can see, it's clearly time is not. This was in 1960. Okay, we are now in 2017, and time has now become this. This is time now. So as you guys can see how everything changed. Time was a loose concept in the 60s, and now time is some type of universal agreement that everyone has been forced to agree upon. Now, the reason for this and why time was unified excuse me, was because of Albert Einstein came around with this general relativity, which all came from in agreement with the cosmic Big Bang, which came from Lemaitre, and Lemaitre was a Vatican priest. Um, Vatican priests are not allowed to just go and speak their minds. A Vatican priest is a voice of the Vatican. They speak for the Vatican. They don't have free speech. A Vatican priest does not have free speech. They don't get the opportunity just to go and just speak their mind freely. Whatever they say has to be sanctioned by the Vatican themselves. And that goes back to the Pope and all the cardinals and all that other bullshit. So you can't sit there and say that Lemaitre was independently speaking his mind, because he was not. He was a paid Vatican priest, and everyone knows that. So moving forward, Lemaitre and Einstein decided to unify time as a universal sense, because we're going to break this down. Being able to have a universal time, you are able to make agendas and schedules, and you're able to actually put humanity and contain humanity under one frame, which is why they call it the time frame. So that is why they unified the sense of time. In the 60s, we can see in the 60s, time completely was meant. It was a concept. It was not a universal. Now it's 2017, and everyone is on the same time. Like, that's just part of it. And as we've seen, that time is part of is to form agendas. So you're forming agendas, and you're forming a work week, and all this, and so that is slavery. Okay, that is slavery. That's total slavery. So we know why time was manipulated and why they want to make up weird um this weird universal supposed law, and it's because socio-economic and human development, and socio-engineering, human engineering, and it's all commercial, because all of that comes back down to commercialism. The reason for putting humanity under one time, which is one world order, one new world order, because as we could see in the 60s, it meant something totally different. And I could go on further to it. Here's another book. Yeah, yes, I do read a lot of Christian books. I know I don't preach the Christianity, the religion itself, because I don't believe I believe it's been um, infiltrated and whatnot. But here's a good book, Perspectives on the World of the Christian Movement. Real good book. And here I'll read something right here real quick, and it's called The Cross Cultural Differences. This is circa, we'll move like 20 years ahead, circa 1981. And as we can see, we already read off of the Webster's book, which was in from the 60s. This one's from the 80s. So here it goes. We have page 370, and it's under the cross cultural differences section, and it goes like this. In their study of various cultures, anthropologists have become aware of the profound differences between them. Not only are there differences in the ways people eat, dress, speak, and act, and their values and beliefs, but also in the fundamental assumptions they make about their world. Edward Sapir pointed out that people in different cultures do not simply live in the same world and different labels attached, but in different conceptual worlds. Edward Hall points out that different cultures can be in his study of time in 1959. So this is a book from the 80s. They're going back to 1959, which is before the Webster's World Dictionary. For example, two Americans agree to meet at 10 o'clock. They are on time. If they show up from 5 minutes before to 5 minutes after 10, if one shows up after 15 minutes after, he is late and mumbles an unfinished apology. he must simply acknowledge that he is late. If he shows up at half past, he should have a good apology. And by 11, he might as well not show up. His offense is unpardonable. In parts of Arabia, the people have a different concept or map of time. If the meeting time is at 10 o'clock, only a servant shows up at 10 in obedience to his master. The proper time for others is from 10:45 to 11:15, just long enough after the set time to show their independence and equality. This arrangement works well for when two equals agree to meet up at 10 after each shows up and expects the other to show up at about 10:45. The problem arises when an American meets an Arab and arranges a meeting at 10 o'clock. The American shows up at 10 at the right time according to him. The Arab shows up at 10:45, the right time according to him. The American feels that the Arab has no sense of time at all, which is false, and the Arab is tempted to think Americans act like servants, which is also false. So as we can see the different concepts of time. Okay, this has gone on since this universal law of time itself that supposedly Einstein and Lemaitre and the Vatican and the United Nations worked upon, because they all work together to unify this and to bring upon humanity one specific um, order. And that order first, in order to have order, you want to have everyone underneath the same agenda. And to have everyone on the same agenda, same page, you need the same time. So now that we moved on to that, I'm gonna go ahead and freeze this right here because Facebook is stupid and it takes a lot longer to download. I'm gonna freeze this here and go on to a next video, and then it's gonna be underneath this one. Okay, so we just did the first video, which was why time was unified. We're gonna go ahead and move on um, more into the past about time. So let me get this up on here. Time. The one we already talked about how they unified it and why it was unified and why we're in our current situation that we are right now. We're gonna move on to two back in time on time. Back in time. Now, I want to talk about the Bible because um, Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, all of these great scientific minds, which you guys call them, which are just pretty much dark energy preachers. I'm not gonna go deep into that right now, but um, you guys, these guys they read the Bible. They spent their time reading the Bible. The Bible is and I'm talking about the Hebrew and Christian Bible because they're not the same. You can try. We can talk about that later on about um, the concept of biblical politics and whatnot. But as of right now, we're gonna just talk about the fact that these greatest minds that a lot of you, and I'm not gonna downplay you atheists. Most of you are fake atheists. You're not real atheists. Um, you follow the cosmic egg, Big Bang creation story, which does in fact come from Lemaitre and Albert Einstein. We just went over that. So we're gonna move forward on that. But these guys read the Bible. Um, and I'm not talking about they were looking for codes. And here's how this works. In those times when the Bible was being written it was not written at once. We all know that. It was spread out, and it was spread out by different authors. And at one point in time, Constantine decided to unify all religions under one taxable ideology. So all of these ancients would want to give messages across to their, to their, because communication, that's what this comes down to. This was communication. um, I know this was before it was actual technological, but communication has always been around. Communication is a part of humanity. It is a psychological fact that communication is a necessity, and it is also a fact that communications has been manipulated by really brilliant minds and brilliant peoples for their own agendas and purposes. So we're talking about right now, in those biblical times, they did not have free speech. Speaking freely would get your head chopped off, stoned. I mean, these were really gory ways um, to die. They were really bad ways to die. They would stone you, they would hang you, they would crucify you. Uh, Getting your head chopped off it was actually a merciful way to be taken out in those days. So we have we have this issue to deal with where you just couldn't give out information to your people and stuff like that. So you would have to code things. So that's where manipulation comes in. So you have to like say this weird little fairy tale, and then there's a concept behind the fairy tale where your people actually, the ones that you're trying to reach, get this message and say, "Oh, I know what they mean." So that's where the Hebrew Bible pretty much comes in, as they were giving each other codes and spreading messages as myths, but in a way to be able um, to get across a message. Which is why when you translate the Bible into English, it makes no, the majority of the Old Testament makes no sense in English because it wasn't meant to be in English. I could tell you a Spanish joke right now, and it's not gonna make any sense at all because of the fact there's a cultural difference upon it. It's not alphabetical. Okay, here's the problem, that before before alphabets, humanity communicated with one another artistically. You wanted to give a message out, you would draw a picture or a portrait, or the letters themselves are in fact an artistic creation themselves. The only difference is that the alphabet now holds the power of phonetics, which is why I've already mentioned this before. If you haven't heard me talk before, then you should, then you would not know it. But if you have heard me talk, you understand already about Phoenicians. We don't really know their name. We don't know what they call themselves. Um, they were they were labeled Phoenicians because their entire culture, which was across the plane of existence, um, collapsed because their communication system failed. It failed because of the fact that the alphabet and this phonetic system was invented and used to destroy that entire civilization. As of now, we can't. Everyone's talking about hieroglyphics, and you're gonna translate them and try to equate them phonetically to our alphabets. That is an impossibility. Those are not letters with phonetic value. Rather, those are images that mean entire concepts, like a logo. You see the bull of Merrill Lynch. You don't think that a bull is actually running the fucking bank. Of course not. It is a complete symbolic image that represent the bullish market. And the bullish market means is you're trying to sell, 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 and you're trying to make profit, 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 profit. If you don't understand economics, you know you cannot have a continuous sell, 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 profit, 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 sell, 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 profit, profit phase in any type of market. There has to be a downfall. There has to be a roller coaster for relativity to kick in. You need relative value. So you need scarcity and you need value. That's where value comes from. So without scarcity, you have no. If diamonds were on the floor everywhere outside, we can go and pick one up. They wouldn't be worth hundreds of dollars right now. Pearls, none of those. Gold, all of that is valuable because of a sense of scarcity. That's where the commercialism and economics comes in. So going back to this thing about time, and I'll move on to the next book. Yes, I'm gonna keep using biblical because it is um, what influenced Isaac Newton. It is what influenced Albert Einstein. I don't care who the fuck you say. You're gonna try to name somebody in science. Dirac. I could go on and on. Heaviside, J.J. Thomson, Tesla. They all read the Bible. Okay, they all did. So that's why I'm using this today. So this one is called Essential Bible: Everything You Need to Understand of the Old and New Testaments. It's by Reverend John Trujillo Jr., PhD, THD. And there's another one, Reverend Kenneth um, Brighton, which is another PhD. So we're gonna go on to there's three passages on here that I want to get into because it deals with time. See here we're gonna see the thing is that time is interconnected with culture and um with history because that's what time is, right? It's pretty much history. And as we read from the 1960s, the concept of time goes back to um, it's loosely defined as it could mean your time, my time, anyone's time, which is something I've always we'll get into that more deeper further as we move further along, where what time actually is an individual sense. It is not a universal concept to be shared as the Rothschilds in the United Nations has led us to believe for their agendas. And we'll go back why there's agendas, and that's what we're moving into. So I'm gonna go ahead and freeze this right here and go on to the next section because like I said, Facebook has a problem with me trying to share anything over 15 minutes. So I'm gonna freeze it right here and move on to the next one, which like I said, we already talked about the Webster and we talked about perspective from from the some nice old Christian books. Okay, so we're back with the Essential Bible. Everything you need to understand about the Old and New Testaments. We're talking about time, and we've gone back to the beginning of our time, as our time in this timeline that we are in, AD. We're gonna go to the beginning of it, and even move. Actually, we're actually gonna move further back than AD into BC. So we have the Tower of Babel. Why is this important? Because we just spoke about the fact that the Phoenicians fell. That entire culture and monetary and economic um, universal system, because it was a universal system at the time, it ended because communications was infiltrated and the alphabet destroyed their communication system, their way of communicating with one another, and like I said, there's no way for us to equate hieroglyphs and hieroglyphic artwork, because that's what it is, to an alphabetic phonetic system. So on the Tower of Babel it says, soon after the covenant was made, human beings decided to build the Tower of Babel. According to the Bible, this was a monument to human pride, power, and arrogance rather than an attempt to invade heaven on some mountain. Up to this time, everyone spoke the same language, but to punish the people for their misdeeds, God scattered the human race all over the world and confused their language, hence the word Babel. So as we can see that the Tower of Babel, um, and in the Bible itself, you could find it that you could look it up in various passages that the Tower of Babel was actually um, a tower that was meant to, like you said, invade. It really was to try and get to heaven. So they wanted to reach the heavens. They wanted to reach the gods in the heavens. And we all know in those days Mars was a god, Jupiter, Helios. Those were all gods. They were all part of the heavens. All these celestial lights that we see today, that we call planets, and we have these different names for them, and you're still worshiping them. That's the God honest truth. You're still worshiping them. You still have the same fairy tales going on. The government has made us believe that mankind has jumped on Apollo and has and Apollo's a god. Hey, that's a god. That's in ancient times. That's a god. So we jumped on Apollo and we crossed the heavens and landed on the moon. And now they're talking about they're sending machines. That they send machines to the god Mars. And there's a possibility that Mars may be able to give humanity life in the heavens. This is Tower of Babel still. So as you can see how time repeats itself no matter what. So moving on a little bit further to this one. So it says chapters 6 to 10 of Genesis continue with the story of Noah and Ark and the flood and the rainbow as a sign of a new covenant. Chapter 11 tells of the Tower of Babel and the people's evil way. To punish them, God scattered them all over the world and confused their languages. So it goes like that's something that is not just in Christian um, biblical myths. It's also in other texts. So at one time we know that humanity was sort of globalized. They all shared one type of universal language in a way. As we see the cultural structures, uh, the historical structures, I mean, as the pyramids, they're all similar, and they all have this sort of get to the heavens type of structure, and that's what the Tower of Babel meant. It doesn't mean it was one tower. Rather, it meant it was a bunch of towers, and it was something that was universal. Here's the problem with communications again: is that things can be misinterpreted easily, and the problem with translating something like ancient Hebrew or ancient Greek into current English just is an impossibility. And then to move more beyond that and to try and translate hieroglyphics is even more of a problem. So as we can see that um, the best way to divide and to conquer is to destroy communications. And that's the point. That's the point we're making, going back to how time started and what time, the concept of time has become what it was. So as of now, we already know that time itself is a loose was at one time a loose term that we could be used in many different forms, like from the definition of the 1960s. Um, we're gonna move now more forward though into the electromagnetic and dielectric concept of time and what time actually is. Okay, so we all know that in the time of the Tower of Babel, they had agendas. Then they were destroyed by another group, which I would call them like the Helios sun worshippers. Honestly, I don't know who. There's so many names, and we can't actually label this group. However, we do know for in fact that they have been behind a lot of evil plots and plans, and it's some type of cult, I don't know. So we're so the Vatican. Wow, okay, the Vatican already had control of the Catholics, so they were, the Catholics are already being taxed, which is one of the largest religions, but they wanted also to tax the other religions and get away with that. So the Vatican in the 30s and UNESCO, because United Nations started off actually as the League of Nations, and before that they were already another group. Um, there were families actually, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. I could go on. There's a few other names that are known. I'm pretty sure there's other names that we don't know about. So they got together and they wanted to put humans back under one type of universal uh, reality where everyone shares the same time. Okay, so but what actually is time? We already know it's something is there. We know something is there. We know it was manipulated to control humanity for population control and socioeconomic and sustainable development and all this other bullshit to try to unify humanity under one agenda. So here's what they're telling us now. Time is. It's in your face. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. That movement is time. Understand that? That movement is time. Before this, they had sand. The hourglass. You turn it upside down. You would rate time of day by looking at the sun. You'd rate the time of the month by looking at the moon. They're measurements of energy. Time is a measurement of energy. Okay? That's what time is. It is not a universal sense that we should all have to agree upon and follow like slaves for agendas and whatnot. That's not reality. The reality is right here. It is the movement of 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 matter from one place to another. That is time. It is the movement of energy. That is electrons. Every time it ticks and talks, that is this, a battery. Okay? Electricity, battery, sparks, electromagnetism, oscillation, frequency. That is time. My brain, my heart oscillates at its own pace, at its own experience, at its own time. And that goes for everyone else. Everyone has their individual experience. Time is energy moving. Do you guys understand this concept? That means that energy is everything. We're talking about electromagnetic energy, dielectric potential, electrons, common current. That's what time is. It is not a universal law. It is a sense that we all have because we are all separately electrical beings. Okay? That is what time is. Time is experience and time is life. And that is electrical. There's no doubting this. There's no debating this at all. Time is this. It's the movement of energy. Agendas are not time. Agendas is political. Agendas, schedules, that is not time. That is political. It is commercialism. It is slavery. And you go back to the Tower of Babel, you come to understand what slavery is, what slavery was, what slavery is going to always be unless we stop it. Okay? Now, we're going to move a little bit more further now. And yes, I love literature. I love to read. Here's Life, Our Century in Pictures. So we're going to move on to the next. I'm going to freeze it here and move on to um, the next video frame of time. Okay, so we're back, and here we have we're going over again the Life, Our Century in Pictures for young people. Think about that. Life, Our Century in Pictures. So you're probably like starting to gain um, an idea of where I'm trying to lead with all this. Is the fact that um, you at one time had a culture that existed on logos and artwork and creativity, and because that's what the hieroglyphic type of languages were spread out across Earth. They were forms of artwork. Letters themselves used to be forms of artwork. You have Old English, which was not your basic lettering that we have today. So you move that far back into what communications is, how important it is, how it's used to manipulate time itself. Because as we've seen in the 1960s, you had all these loose terms, a bunch of words, mumbo jumbo about what time was in the 60s. And then we move on forward into the 80s, and they're already starting to unify. By then now they already had unified this concept of time for agendas and schedules and whatnot, and which all comes back to the agenda of commercialism, which comes back to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the International Monetary Fund bankers, which have moved on to have, they went from the League of Nations to now the United Nations, and they have all these little outfits underneath the United Nations. They have UNESCO, then they have UNUSA, and those are all um, influential upon all of the total population of humanity. So as you can see, what's going on is at one time the culture in the tower in the time of the Tower of Babel, where everyone had towers. That's what they were. The pyramids. They were all towers of this Babel, and on top of most of these structures, they had astronomical observational tools, and they worshipped the sky. They worshipped the heavens. They worshipped gods in the heavens. They worshipped fairy tales that the elite in those days would spread and they would pass around to one another, and it was all propaganda then. It's propaganda now. So as you can see where I'm moving forward, and as we can see here we go. This is at the end. This is our century in pictures. In pictures, we're moving back into an artistic age, and that's the truth. Um, the electric flat earth theorists have proven this concept simply by using by combining actually. So at one time we had nothing but images. Then for a while there we had a bunch of words and words and words and words and words and words. And then they unified everything. So they want a single language again. So then here's what they have now in 2000. You have these images. Look, can you see that? Let me see. R2D2 and C3PO, and there's that that famous image that everyone turns into a little clown and stuff that makes fun of. And there's basketball uh that's big, and sports has always been used. In those days, uh they were doing those big old coliseum battles and stuff and whatnot. So, and today, as we see in here and like football and stuff, but as you can see, what the power of images, the power of images, and as we go through this book, it's a great book, you guys. It's still in mint condition. I have to take care of my books. But we go back to the the Turkish and the Dust Bowl. If you guys ever heard of the Dust Bowl, that was a big mistake by humanity, trying to use too much fertilizer and not enough nature. They destroyed a good part of the Native American land, and it goes on and on. We have like art from Oklahoma, and we have all these dramas, My Fair Lady, The Greatest Year in Hollywood. It's a great book, but it's all about images. So as you can see, what's going on, where they moved from a bunch of words to a bunch of images, and this is something that is gonna happen no matter what, because humanity is reaching a time, because as we already know, and I've already explained, that time itself is energy movement, is energy itself moving. Energy is everything, and your electrical brain sparks, and you think, you have electrical signals, and that is totally energy. It's totally electromagnetic and dielectric potential. So this is what's been, and this is what also moves um, and animates living beings, and all living beings have this in common. So we see that energy is actually what makes is actually time, and time is the motion of energy. And so you have to sit there and ponder the fact that energy itself is intelligence on its own, and it decides, and it moves, and all of us have this in common. You go to the to Genesis in the biblical scriptures, and it specifies that God gave breath to through the nostrils of to man, and to give him his animation. Therefore, the breath or the essence of God is within every human being, and this is not just this story goes beyond. To be honest, um, the 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 Old Testament coincides with more older ancient stories. They're very similar. They just have different name characters and whatnot. So all these great minds that a lot of that a lot of us idolized and read about. They read these biblical stories and they were influenced by them. And so you have to bring that into account. You just can't disregard that, because that's what influence is, and we see. So if you stop and think about what time being energy, the motion of energy, and energy itself therefore must be intelligence, and is shared by all common um, animated life beings, then the essence and the breath of God would be un- would be within all of us, because that's exactly, scientifically and biblically speaking, is implied by nature itself. So why is this important? Because if I can manipulate your time, I can manipulate your reality, and I could probably profit off of it. That's called commercialism. That's called slavery. That's the United Nations. That's the Rothschilds. That's the Rockefellers. That's the International Monetary Fund bankers. They think we're some kind of fucking stock that they can just manipulate and put into these cycles of time. So it is important. The shape of the Earth. Well, the shape of Earth implies rotation in time. It implies a universal agenda. Is reality really actually a globe? Or is it electrical and infinite and dimensional? As we all know, time itself is energy moving. And if you stop to consider the fact that that somehow was intelligence, then you have to sit there and disregard everything that UNESCO has taught you in Section 1 of the World Core Curriculum Scriptures. Because that's what that is. All of that is hypothetical nonsense. And Section 1 deals with planets. Uh, Not one human has landed on any planet, and they never shall. As a matter of fact, what we see in these books, what we see in these books, is not what we see with our own eyes and our own observational devices. What we have recorded completely contradicts what they're selling us, because that's commercialism. This book, as nice as it is, was 25, 26 bucks here and well around the world, and in Canada it was $37. This is commercialism. They sold you these images, and somewhere people bought it and they spread it, and it's been spreading, and people are just mindlessly repeating it. When the fact is that that's all based on agendas, and it's all political, and it's all propaganda. And as we already know that time is not what they sold to us. Do we have to agree upon it right now? Yes. Even if we were to try to destroy the current system, we would have to be on time, on the same time, to coordinate to destroy it. So it is very important. Time is totally relevant to the shape of Earth, whether it being flat, round, triangle, donut hole, whatever. Okay, it's part of the agendas, and we know for a fact those agendas are tied to the United Nations. They are tied to UNESCO. They are tied to UNUSA. They are tied to all that propaganda. All that propaganda is tied to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and to the International Monetary Bank Fund, and that's the truth, and the God honest truth. So you have to stop and take all that into consideration when you want to define your own reality and your own experience here in on this dimensional plane of reality. I'm gonna end it that I'm gonna end that there and say Happy New Year. I'm gonna get like fucked up and shit in a little bit, just not yet. I'll talk to everyone, maybe next year.